Hi, everybody. Welcome to Heartfelt Creative. I'm Diana. Um, Thanks for joining me for my second monthly It's So Social. Just a little live event or videoed event that I do once a month on a Sunday. Just a time to get together and do a little sewing or talk about a specific sewing or quilting or embroidery technique or idea. So last month, which was our first Let's Get Social, we talked about, we actually had a Zoom meeting where we were all face to face on Zoom, which was fantastic. And we talked about interfacings and stabilizers. It's always a question that comes up. What do I use the stabilizer for? What do I need to put on the back of this fabric when I'm making this kind of an idea? That sort of thing. And so that's what we talked about. We had a great time. I think we had like 10, 12 people maybe in that group that day. So we had a nice little group and a good chat together. This month, we're going to make a little project. We're going to make my little multi-use flower petal topped bag. Can be used for lots of things. We'll talk about that in a sec. And we are just going to do that through this video this month. And when I get to talking about it, I will tell you where you can find the free pattern download, which you'll need for making it. So every month on a Sunday, towards the latter half of the month, I do this event live through my Facebook page, Heartfelt Creative W/Diana. So Heartfelt Creative with Diana. And you can join me there. Or if you don't have time on a Sunday, because I know Sunday can be family time or personal time where you just want to kind of relax, or it's church time and time to spend time, getting yourself revived in your life and your spirit and your soul. I understand all of that. And so maybe doing an event on the computer isn't your thing on Sunday. You can always watch this later on. So like I said, today we're going to just do this little, I call it my little multi-use petal bag, because I've designed it so the top of the bag has these like little petals, or they could look like little bunny ears. They kind of look like little birthday candles. None of them are perfectly shaped, and they don't have to be. Flowers in nature aren't perfect, right? They're kind of all misshapen and all, and that's what actually makes them perfect in nature. So we don't want to be too serious about this project or too hard on ourselves if we make some mistakes. Like I made this one earlier, and I had so many mistakes on it and problems from my sewing, so I'm going to be redoing this one. But I'm actually going to use that fabric in today's demonstration. You will need the pattern download for this, and all it is, this is on my website, Heartfelt Creative with Diana, which is WITH Diana. So Heartfelt Creative with WITH Diana.com. And there's a link here in the YouTube video. You will find a thumbnail that looks like this. And that's where you can download the free template, okay? And this is what the template looks like. This is all you're going to be downloading, is this template. It's completely hand-drawn. Don't worry that these aren't all exactly the same shapes on top. It doesn't matter, okay? But I've also written in the information about what this template is here in the body of the template, because you're going to cut this out. And I know I hate when I go to cut out a template and there's nothing in it, and I'm like, oh gosh, what was this for again? What am I making with this? So I tried to like do it at the top of the page if you want just a page in your file. And I tried to do it in the body of the template so that you can have just the template as well and not forget what this crazy looking shape is for. So that is what you need to download, free download at my website. I also wanted to tell you, every Monday I do a live event at 1 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. over in the UK, called Patches and Pieces Monday, because my real love in life is quilting. You can see this beautiful quilt back here. This was a quilt. This is the very first quilt I ever worked on when my grandma was teaching me how to do it. And oddly enough, it's called Grandma's Flower Garden. And when she passed, this quilt became mine. And I love it. But I did help make some of those flowers when I was 7. So you're never too young to learn to sew. And back then, there were no sewing machines that you did this on. It was all by hand. So anyway, lots of history in that little quilt, and I love it. And while I'm still getting curtains made for my window, if I only had a moment to do it, I've kind of put this up because I love it. And it reminds me of my dear grandmother who taught me how to quilt, who I love dearly. So anyway, so on Mondays, I do patches and pieces. It's just an hour, sometimes less. Like this last week, we didn't even go a whole hour. And what we do is I show you the construction of a quilt block, okay? And we talk about it. So this last week, we did Ohio Star. Now, a lot of people say, oh, Ohio Star, very traditional block. Absolutely, very traditional block. But did you ever try flipping your pieces around and interchanging them to see the other block shapes, the variations you can come up with? So that's part of what I showed on last week's Patches and Pieces. If you want to see that, you have kind of two options for watching. You can go back to the video section on my Facebook page, Heartfelt Creative with Diana, and that's W/Diana, and look in the video section, and you'll see the Patches and Pieces event, and you can watch the whole event. But, you know, I talk about updates in my groups and all that kind of stuff during that. If you just want to get down to the nitty gritty and watch the demo part, that's right here on YouTube. There's a video called Patches and Pieces, Ohio Star. That's this. And that will take you through just the demo. And in the description of that box, there is a link for you to go to my webpage to download the free curated pattern for this. So when I say fully curated, I mean there's written instructions, diagrams, and there are diagrams showing you 3 or 4 different variations that you can use with these block pieces to make different blocks. And that goes with that demonstration version. So there's a couple of ways that you can do that. Now, there's not a pattern to download necessarily every week. Patches and Pieces tends to be a video demo. Help yourself, watch it. I try to give you the information. But if there is something you need, like this was unique because there were variations. So I did that full pattern, put that out on my website, and you're welcome. You're welcome to print it. You're welcome to tell friends about it. They can go print it, whatever you like, okay? But so that's this. And if you're interested in other quilting blocks and quilt talk, you'll see here in YouTube, I have several different patches and pieces since I started putting them on YouTube. Now, if you go to that Facebook page, you'll see all of our patches and pieces back to when we started. I haven't downloaded all of those to YouTube yet. As I can, I do one here and there, but I've just started putting the videos on YouTube here recently. But help yourself to that and enjoy it. All righty. So for today, our little bag, we need our template, and we need to go ahead and cut it out. So it looks like that. I've already got a piece prepared for cutting. So all you need to make this is 2 halves or a half of 2 fat quarters, okay? So I'm going to show you this outer fabric. So that's half of 1 fat quarter. So you know when you unfold your fat quarter, it's already got this center seam line. Just unfold it and cut it in half. And leave that fold as it is, because that's going to be your fold that's going to end up giving you the full-sized piece of the pattern. And you'll need 1 lining and 1 outer. And so for my outer, I've chosen this lovely Kimberbell fabric. I think the line is called Red, White, and Blues. Don't quote me on that, but it's a beautiful fabric. I love it. It's very springy, very bright. I love red, so of course the red was, and I love yellow too, so that just, you know, that was me all over the place. And then I chose another little fabric for my lining, which is from that same collection from Kimberbell Designs, which are these little bitty pink ditzy flowers on a red background. Just love them. Let me just say here, I'm going to show you products and stuff during these videos. I am not supported or paid by anybody. These are just things I've used that I like, and that I thought I want you to know about, because that, as quilters and as sewists and stitchers, that's how we find out about stuff a lot of the times, is we share that information. And that's all I'm doing, is sharing that information. You might say, oh, you know, I've tried that and I hate that product. Then you don't have to use it, obviously. Or you might say, oh, hey, you know what? That makes sense. And that's something I've been looking for, or that I might be interested in. There you go. Now you have some information to help you figure out what you might need in your stitching journey. So that's all products by name or about. And when I show fabrics, if I have information, I try to give it out, because I know as a quilter, when I see fabrics, the one thing I want to know right off the bat, who makes that fabric and where can I find it? So I'm sure you can find this you might find this at a local quilt shop, especially if you have a quilt shop that is a Kimberbell dealer. They're going to have these fabrics probably, or be able to find them for you. And I'm sure you can find them online as well in some of the larger online shops, Fat Quarter Shop, places like that. Maybe Missouri Star might even have it, not sure. But so, alrighty, that's all that stuff is about. So I wanted to talk to you while we cut out about a few tools you're going to need. One, I'm going to recommend a turning tool for the little petals that either has a ball point on it or something that is very blunt. Like you can find chopsticks that are very blunt. Please, on this project, don't use anything, because sometimes I've been known to do this myself, and we all have. Don't use something with a point like that. Now, believe it or not, I use that to turn sometimes. Depends, but don't use that, because these little points on these little petals, you're going to end up going right through them. It's just, even if you're gentle, because it takes a little bit of a push at one point when you're turning them. And I wouldn't want you to go, oh, now I've got to turn it all back the other way and go resew it. I don't want that to happen. So try to use something that has a blunt end, or this nice ballpoint. I will tell you this one, I think this is made, yeah, this is is it RLK? Let me get the Rnk, yeah, Rnk Churning Tool is this product right here. I love it. I've had it for several years now, and that ballpoint is just delicious. I have another one from another company that has a ballpoint here, big here and the small here. That one's nice too. And if I ever use that one on one of these, I'll tell you where I got it from. But that is just a lovely turning tool, and it's all metal. It's hefty. It's not plastic. It's really, you know, it's not going anywhere. You drop that, you're going to have a sore toe. Then you can always cut this pattern out with your favorite pair of snips. But I find that getting in around these parts, it was a little fiddly for me. And I'm not someone that cares for fiddly. I mean, sometimes you just got to be a little fiddly, right? You got to have stuff with curves. But what I found was, so I have a 28mm rotary cutter. It worked great. So if you have one, I suggest, if you want to do a rotary cut, and I'll show you how to rotary cut with this, this one worked great, really great. However, there's two other sizes. A 45mm is not going to work. It's too big to go around those small spaces. An 18mm, this one is from Fiskars, but I also know Clover makes a great looking one. That's a great one. And it's just the slide, the thumb slide to release the blade, right? And then there's this little guy, and it's called the Shark Applicator. It was designed, the gentleman's name is Rob. He's great. His online YouTube channel is called The Man Cave. He does a lot of work with Missouri Star Quilt Company. He's fantastic. And so I recommend, go look up his YouTube too. You'll learn a lot from Rob. The Man Cave. But this is a product he designed, and it's called the Shark Applicator. And look when I take the safety cap off, look how small that blade is. It is, believe it or not, it is smaller than that blade. It's about, golly, I'm going to say I was thinking it was 8 or 6. It might be 12, but it is smaller than this one. And that's great. And it is perfect for what the name indicates, applique. And the nice thing that Rob did on here too is he put a hole there, and I can only assume that's if you want to hang it on a lanyard. I'm not sure about that, or maybe hang it on a string by your sewing machine. I'm not quite sure, but this point, this is really great when you're taking appliques off your applique sheet, or when you're getting backing off of a fusible web. And that nice little rotary cutter blade is perfect going around these little petals. And I'm actually going to try and demonstrate with this one. And I will say this, because you may have heard me talk about these before, these two, and go, I don't really care for them. Well, that was because I was using them for the wrong job. You all have heard the phrase, use the right tool for the right job. Well, I got these thinking I would use them for a specific thing, and they didn't work. But they weren't made to do that. They were made to do things like this applique stuff and all. And when I used them for the right job, they were a dream, and now I love them. So live and learn, right? That's what we all do. So let me flip the camera, and you know what? I'm going to take my pins. I'm going to just take my template. That's it, all cut out. I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to bring over I have a little 9-inch pressing mat and my little iron, and I'm just going to press out some of these wrinkles in this one. I just set that up as a demo earlier and forgot to press it, but it should try to get some of those bigger creases out already. And let me do that on this piece as well. And you don't have to get it super duper flat. You just want some of that, how your fold makes a line there that puffs up. You want that to be a little bit flatter. And like I said in the beginning, we always want to be as precise as possible, but I don't want you to freak out in a few spots when things won't line up perfectly. I will tell you right now, when you go to line up the two fabrics and line up, you're not going to get them exact. There's going to be a little bit out here, a little bit out there. That won't matter, because the way you're going to sew it, you can go around that. So let's go ahead and flip our camera, and I'm going to start with my lining fabric, this cute little red fabric with the pink ditzy flowers. I just think it's so sweet. They're like little pink daisies. They're very sweet. Okay, let me flip the camera so that you can see. There we go. Let's get this all. There we go. Nice. Okay, good shot. So right here is my fold. Okay, right there's the fold that was originally in the fat quarter. Now, when you print this out, if you don't see the full line, the word here, fold, don't worry about that. This is the proper size. This was an error in our scanner, on our scanner when we were scanning the whole template page. And so what I've learned now is I have to move my piece up and draw another line. I was just trying to save you a cut there, but best laid plans, So anyway, here is our fold, and we're going to just lay our template. Now, normally when I get a template like this, I'm going to try and put it on my edge and try to save, I could save all this fabric, right? But look what happens right here with this pattern. If I do that, oh, look, that's not in there. So I just figured, you know what? I'm going to waste a little bit of fabric, but I could end up with enough left over that I could save it for some small applique pieces if I wanted to. But I'm not going to worry about waste on this project. I'm going to get 2 of these little bags out of 2 fat quarters. And if I have waste, then I have waste. That's what I decided this time. I'm going to lay this right on the fold. Now, see how this has got just a teeny bit of fabric right here? Don't worry about that if that shows through, because this is going to adjust a little bit when you pin, but this is one that using these clips, the Wonder clips, you can't do it on the sides and all, right? But you can if you want to help keep it in good shape at the bottom. You can clip it right there, or do a couple of clips if you want to. And that will help keep it positioned. And then I just took 2 straight pins and I did them. See how when I pinned that one, this moved a little bit? That's just, so I'm going to clip that. I'm going to readjust that a little bit. Reclip and place my straight pin. All right. So now I can cut it out. Now, as I said, I can take, and that's what I did when I did my very first sample one, is I cut up and cut across. But when it came to cutting these out, although the scissors, the little snips did a great job, because I didn't pin these down, I was having to kind of hold, and it just became a little more fiddly than I like. So that's when I pulled out my little rotary cutters. So I kind of used this one and then this one, or you could use this one. You can use this one for the whole thing if you want to do rotary cutting. So let me show you that. So I'm going to take my rotary template here, my cutting ruler, and I'm going to lay it here. Now see, because I have that clip there, that's going to be a problem. So let's move that over. And I'm going to put that right there. I'm going to take my 28mm rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut up straight to that corner. Now see, I got a little bit of paper. That happens with paper templates. And so I'm cut all the way up to there. No problems. Now I'm going to just rotate this a little bit. Now, what I suggest is as you get big parts done, cut them away. It just, now this is a nice little strip here. That could be used for something. That's definitely going to go in my scrap bag because that can definitely be used. That's not waste. That is another possibility for another project. Okay, so now I'm going to take the little sharp applicator. I'm going to take off the safety cap, and I am going to work it and use it around my little petals. So here we go. And I'm just going to go right up there. Now I probably will have to come back with my snips and snip that tiny corner, no problem. When you are free form cutting with a rotary cutter, unlike when you're using a template, you can use gloves, rotary gloves and all with a template too. That's a good safety thing. But when you are free form cutting, please go slow and be careful. Wear a safety glove on this hand in case you miss, because you know you could go right across that hand. But go slow, be patient with yourself. So I just place my rotary cutter right there where I want it, press down a little bit, and slowly start to cut. And this is working out great, getting right up next to my fabric in my template and moving around. This is a normal 45. Look what would happen if I tried to do that with this. I mean, I'm not getting around without this getting all kind of wibbly and crazy, and I'm not getting down into these points with that 45. So I got that part right. And like I said, just be patient for yourself. This is a fun little project to do. Don't try to do it. You can do these quickly, but trust me, when you do them quickly, as I found out, I end up really messing up. So give yourself a little bit of time, a little bit of patience. If you're going to do this project with a child who is learning to sew, the sewing is certainly easy enough for a child to learn to do. But please, why don't you do the cutting for them, especially if you're using a rotary cutter? Because it's a pretty, it can be a dangerous piece of equipment if not used properly, or at least supervise them or have them use their little snips or something. That might be a little better. Just a safety tip. We don't want anyone getting hurt. But see, this is just getting right in there. And because we're on the fold, we're actually getting 6 petals cut by just tracing around the 3, which I love, because tracing around 6 of these 2 times, which would be 12, would probably make me a little crazy. Someone was telling me that they thought that this looked like a birthday cake with candles on top. And that was funny because when I was doing this, I thought, you know, these look like birthday candles up here. And then I thought, oh yeah, the whole cake. So she was right. So you could consider it that. And if you use it as a gift bag, well, perhaps that's what it will remind you of, is a birthday cake. But as it's spring and all, and I was thinking of seed packets and things like that you could put in it. I thought of them more as petals, but whatever they remind you of is just fine. So when this got made, it was made for doing this kind of fine work, and it really works great. What I was originally trying to use it for was just, I can't even remember what it was I was trying to use it for anymore, but I will just tell you this, it was not the right project. All right, so I have that one cut to there. Now, as we do with all of our rotary cutters, close it. And for closing this, I put the cap back on. And then I'm going to turn it. I'm lefty, so I'm having to turn this to line up my template, start right here at my corner and down. And so now I have, and take this off. I'm going to have to do a little snipping with my scissors. And you know, that's okay that I have to do it that way. I don't have a problem with that. All righty, so I'm going to come up here, and I've got just a couple little threads right here in these corners, which I knew I would have. Snip. That one got all the way through. This one is just a little snip. And this one needs a little snip. There we go. And then you have this much left over. Again, you could cut this straight up and have a strip. You could cut this straight across and you still have some pieces. So there's some good pieces there left for your scrap bag. Okay, so there we go. There's one. And you can see when we unfold it, oops, there we go. We're going to have a piece that looks like that. We need to do that one more time with the outer fabric. So here we go. There's my fold. And I want to line up my template with the bottom. Oops, there we go. My template with the bottom. I'm going to try doing my pinning first and put that clip in at the end. There's that pin. And now here's this pin. Okay. Now I can just take one of my clips and clip it right together that way. All right, so again, I'm going to take my rotary ruler and cut. I'm going to work my petals and then cut again. So give me just 1 second. I'll be right back and we'll continue. Okay, we're back. And you can see I've got this cut out and I'm just about ready to take it off. Let me apologize to Rob at Man Sewing, not the Man Cave. I do apologize. Rob will never see this. He doesn't know me from Adam. But I don't want to confuse you all by having you look for something that doesn't exist. And I want to get his site right for him because I want to acknowledge him and all the wonderful work he does. So it's Man Sewing, not the Man Cave. The Man Cave, just, that's kind of a just came out. So I've got my pins and my clip out now. I can take my template away. And if you haven't messed it up too much, you know, sometimes we trim paper and all, you can save this and use it again, or just print yourself out a second copy and always keep it handy. But you can always go back to my website and reprint it if you need to. So here's our second one. This is actually going to be my outer fabric. There was one thing I wanted to show you. I'm going to bring over a piece of the scrap fabric that I had. So when I was showing you in the cutting, let's just place this right here so you can kind of see what I mean. When I was showing you coming in closely to your points here, so, and then I clipped them, that's perfectly fine. That happens. That's a really tight point. But I wanted to tell you something about your small rotary cutter here too. Sometimes I notice if I just get in here pretty close and give a little press there and maybe roll back a little bit, it cut that point for me perfectly. And I didn't have to, when I did this one, I didn't have to cut any extra little snippets out at the end. So just press that in a little bit and it should cover that for you with no problem. All right, so I'm not going to remove my center line here from my fold because that's going to give me the center point. But now what we want to do is unfold our two pieces and lay them together, right sides together, or as I like to say, pretty sides together. So our outer sides, what you're going to see. Okay. And what helps us here with lining up is those center pieces. But what you want to line up more than that are your little petals at the top and the bottom. Now see, sometimes your petals are off like this. You can see that here. I'm not going to be worried about that. But sometimes, so that's off too. Sometimes if you take your piece and you flip it, you might find that these line up better. I know this, that when I used my little applicator and my small rotary cutter, I had far less problems with matching up my petals than I did when I used my snips. When I used my snips, I had a real hard time getting my petals to match up. But yeah, this is actually working out better. Yeah, that worked out better. So there might be a direction where your petals match up better. So don't be afraid to take it and flip it like that and lay it back down and see. So here I've got a much better grouping. So what I'm going to do, now it's time to get out all of your little wonder clips. I just love them. What I do is on the side closest to me, or you could do it over here, either side is fine. I find the center and I go out about 1.5 inches or so on each side. I want about a 2.5 to 3 inch gap there. And that's our turning gap. So that's good. And so that tells me I can start stitching here. And when I get around to here, I stop and that leaves me my gap. But what I'm going to do then is I'm going to put a few clips down the sides. Everything's all nice and matched up. If you're off just a little bit, just kind of roll it with your fingers. I'm trying to use only these smaller baby clips. They're the mini clips because the regular sized ones are a little bit heavy for just 2 pieces of fabric together. So let me get those back in my bucket. I am Wonder Clip mad. Oh no, that's not even all of them. I have a whole nother bucket like that over at another machine. In fact, let me bring in, this is the one from beside when I take them out. I've got more of my little ones just all there, a little easier. So I'm just doing a few clips on my sides just to help hold things in place because things shift. We all know that when we sew, things tend to shift. Now, when I've done this before, I haven't put any clips on my petals because they're, even the baby ones are a little heavy for those petals. But since this is now the 4th time I've done one of these, I am going to suggest that you put a little straight pin in all of them with your pin heading in this way so that, you know, you're less likely to pin yourself. And the reason I rarely, if ever, use pins is because I've been poked by pins a bazillion times. I've been sewing and all for over 55 years now. No, for almost 55 years now. And I don't know if it's because I'm a lefty or what it is, but I just got tired of getting pricked by my pins all the time. And when they came out with Wonder Clips, I was sold. So I rarely, people that know me well know that this is a lot of pins for me. I hardly ever use pins like this. I do a lot of theater costume sewing, and sometimes you have to use them for those. So I have tons of those around. All right, so now we're all set to take our piece over to the sewing machine. Just before we start, while you can see the whole thing laid out, let me explain how the sewing is going to work as far as seam allowance. So we're going to start out, let me flip this back around. This is the side with my gap. We're going to start here. And when we're on the straightaway here and the straightaway here, we're going to use a standard 1/4 inch seam allowance. But when we are on our petals, we're going to use 1/8 of an inch, maybe even less. We literally just want to come in around so that we're not making this opening really small, because remember, we've got to turn those inside out, and so that we still get a pretty nice petal shape, like that one, okay? So you'll see me, I'm just going to tell you now, go slow with your petals. You're going to do some stopping and starting and adjusting. And when you do that, you're not going to have a problem with your curves. So take a deep breath, relax. It's going to be fine. And let's go sew this together, okay? I'm going to flip the camera now over to the camera by the machine. All righty, here we are. I have my stitch length set to another. I'm going to set my stitch length to 1.8. Now I know a normal stitch length is roughly 2.5. That's how my machine is set. But I'm going to tell you why. The 1.8 along here, the straightaways, is technically not necessary. But when we get to these petals, if we do that 1.8, we're going to have a lot easier time coming around the curves of our petals. The narrower your stitch length on curves like this, the easier it is to actually get around your curves. So I've just said, okay, we're going to do 1.8 for the whole thing. It'll really reinforce those long straightaways, and that's just fine. All right, so we're doing a straight stitch. I'm bringing in this. Now I have my walking foot on right now. You can use any regular straight foot, 1/4 inch foot if you like. Anything like that is fine. I've been doing a lot of sewing lately where I've needed my walking foot. I know where my 1/4 inch mark and all is for this foot, so I'm fine with using it. And remember, one of the things your walking foot helps with is it helps keep your fabrics from sliding as much because it's moving them together at the same time on the bottom and on the top. So I'm kind of putting my finger right where that point is, and I'm taking out that clip for lining this up. And it doesn't matter if I'm right on it or not. And I'm just getting right in there because with the clip there, you can't get in there, right? So let's put our needle down. We're all set up.
And we're at a 1/4 inch, and I'm just gonna get my sewing going. So I've come ahead a few stitches. Now I'm going to go back a couple of stitches, just a couple, just to reinforce, because at the beginning and the end of our turning gap there, that's where you're going to get stress on this one. We're turning it inside out and we don't want to pop our stitches. All right, so now you can see, like right here, my little points are sticking this way at the moment. So I'm going to have to be a little careful here. Also, I'm left-handed, so sometimes my hand gets in here, but I hope you can see. I try to keep it out of the way because I'm not guiding with my right hand, I'm guiding with my left. Like I said, I keep my machine for projects like this set at a medium speed, just so that even if my foot takes off, I'm not gonna get things out of control. So I'm doing a 1/4 inch on this straightaway, and I'm gonna come up. Let me get my little, I love these tweezers. They have this really nice little point on them, so it's good for showing things. So I'm gonna come up to about right here before I turn. Yeah, you can't really see that very well. I'm looking in the monitor. Yeah, well, you're gonna be just about 1/8 of an inch or so before your edge here, because when you turn, that'll get you in a nice way to straight away across here. So I'm just going to come up a little bit. I'm going to go slow. I don't need to do any back stitching right here. Okay, so I'm right where I want to be. I'm going to lift my foot, my presser foot, and I'm going to turn, bring it down again. So now I want to come over so that I'm about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the petal here. So I'm going to come into about right there. And that'll get me in good alignment for starting my petal right there. Now I'm going to lift my foot again and turn. And as I said, doing these is going to take you a little bit of time, but honestly, you can do this little pouch in 30 minutes or less, even with going slow. So I've got it lined up. I'm going to come up 1/8 of an inch on this edge here for my seam. I'm going to come up to where it starts to curve, and I'm going to stop, and I'm going to lift, and I'm going to rotate. And I'm going to do a few stitches till we start to do some more curving, stop, and rotate. And that's what you're going to do all the way around the outside of your piece. Now I need to get this pin out of here, so let me get that out of there. And you want to come up to your point of your petal, stop. You want to turn, and you're going to start coming down this side. And stop. Something is stuck on my foot pedal. What is that? Oh, it's the electric cord. That's not good. Okay, hang on. Just trying to get my cord off my pedal so I'm not crunching it each time I put my foot down there. That's better. Okay. So now I'm just going to come around. And as I said before, you don't need to be ultimately too picky, but you just want to make sure you're getting both sides sewn together. Those are my little starting threads. They were in my way, so I'm going to go ahead and clip them now. All righty. Okay. Now again, I've come down so I can just turn, and I'm going to come across this little straightaway over to my next petal. Come in about 1/8 of an inch onto the petal, boom, and turn. And and take my needle or my pin out. Please, folks, I know that there are people out there that sew over their pins. Please don't. I know there are even professionals that say, oh, I'm a professional, I've done this, I've never had them break. That's great. That's so great. You only ever need to break a needle and have it go flying into your eye to know that that is not a wise thing to do. I've had needles go flying into my eye, even with pins out sometimes because of breakages. And if I hadn't had my glasses on, I could be blind right now. So just be careful. Safety is always more important than speed or anything else when we're sewing. Sorry, I bumped the camera there. So that's just my little safety tip, please. Okay, I'm gonna stop and turn. And once you get used to going around these little curves, you'll get the feel of when you want to stop and adjust. And I'm probably stopping and adjusting in this demo more than I normally would, but I want you to see that it's not difficult, that you can do these curves without having to be overly concerned. Because I know curves can be fiddly and they can be a challenge sometimes when you're newer to sewing, and they, we'll be honest, they scare people sometimes because sometimes new things scare us. So I'm just trying to show you that with a little patience and a few settings on your machine to that 1.8 stitch length, you're not going to have a problem. And if you think that those of us that have sewn forever in a day don't have problems, let me tell you, we do too. And it's just fabric and thread. So you can always take it out and do it again. Don't be hard on yourself. Nobody here is going to just judge you on perfection. Nobody should judge anybody on perfection, unless you're judging somebody in a contest, I guess. Okay, so I'm down a quarter of an inch or an eighth of an inch or so there. I'm going to come over just a couple of stitches because now I'm back on my main straightaway. So I want this to be at a 1/4 inch and I'm right there. But before we do that, see, I've got my pieces nicely sewn. That's not completely straight there. There's a tiny bit of a jig there, but it's overall, it's just fine. Take out my clips. I'm going to move my speed up just a little bit for the straightaway because a tighter stitch or a shorter stitch is going to take longer to stitch. And I know it can be boring to sit and watch someone sew on a straightaway. All right, so now we're almost down here again. So we're going to stop when we get to that, roughly that 1/8 of an inch. There we go. And turn, and we've got our 3 little petals up here to do. Coming into that 1/8 of an inch. Okay. So I know my pin's still there, but I know where my needle is and I know where the end of my pin is. I'm not sewing over it, and I will be removing it here in just a moment. I just want to get myself well into the petal before I take it out. Because holding these petals together, I'm finding is making this a little easier to keep them straight. But now I'm going to run into the ball head of my pin. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my pin out. I'm well and securely into the stitching, so it's not really going to move on me at this point. And I'm going to come right up to my point and flip, or not flip, but pivot. So if you have a machine where your needle will stop in the needle down position, that's wonderful. That's very helpful for curves because when we pivot, we want our needle down so it's not going anyplace. If your machine doesn't have that needle down technology in it, which a lot of machines nowadays do. I'm thinking most of them do. But if you have an older machine that doesn't, just remember when you stop, if you have to use your hand crank on the side, your hand wheel, make sure when you do that you're stopping that, you're putting that needle in the down position so that you don't lose your spot there. Because I remember when sewing machines didn't have that feature. And so you were working your foot and your hand over on the side with every little bit of stitching you did. Okay, I'm coming down to my 1/8 of an inch. And I'm gonna go across my straightaway here to my next petal. There we go. And I'm gonna pivot. And rotate and pivot. Oops, now my pin's getting in the way. I love these little glass-headed pins. They're so nice. Because if I accidentally leave one in sometimes, I'm not going to melt it with my iron. And they're nice and tiny, so they're really easy to use. All right, so I can see here that my fabric underneath has skewed a little. So I'm going to go ahead and try my turning just a little bit shy to make sure. Oops, sorry. We're trying to figure out a different area to mount the camera so you all can see and I don't bump it with my left hand. Going to be redoing the studio here in the next week or so. I've got some new equipment coming in for my, because I am digitizing my own embroidery designs now. And so we're going to take that time when we're installing that equipment, and we're going to take the time to figure out some better placements for this machine camera. I think you can probably see okay, but hello, there's my left hand, and it tends to want to, you know, bump into it a lot. All right, so am I right there? Let's take one more stitch. There we go, that's better. And look, we're almost done. We're just right here on the last petal. Go ahead and take my pin out now. Oh, we're almost done. Doesn't always feel good when you're almost done sewing the fiddly bits of a project. I know it does for me. Alrighty, and I'm about 1/8 of an inch over. I'm going to take just a couple of stitches in. And now I'm ready. I'm right on my 1/4 inch, and I'm going to come down. This final clip right there is the ending of where I have my gap. I'm going to kind of put my finger there now for a moment and just kind of eyeball it. Now I'm going to go back a couple of stitches and I'm good. All righty. The sewing part is done for this part. We've got just a couple more seams to make and a tiny little boxed bottom to do. But let's look at our petals real quick on both sides. Now see, on this side, I did miss on that side. So I am going to, even though I was really careful, I did miss it. So I'm going to set my needle down. I'm going to go forward a couple, and I'm going to back just one, and I'm going to come up. Sometimes that happens. It's not a big deal. There's no sewing police. Unlike Santa Claus, of which we all know there really is a Santa Claus. At least for me there is. Okay, so over here I've got it. It's there, but it's really on the edge. I don't like that. So I'm going to redo this one too a little bit. just to make sure that when I flip these open, all the seams aren't going to come popping through. And like I said, because we're not too worried, now see right there, that one's a little shy as well. And we were really careful and had these lined up. I still want to make sure that I don't have problems with these. So I'm just going to take that little bit of time to go over them. And that's even with using pins. So, and like I said, when you turn these, they're not all going to look exactly the same. They'll be shaped a little here, shaped a little there, depending on your sewing. That's perfectly fine. That's what nature does too. And if nature does it, I figure I can do it when it comes to my little sewing. All right, so I'm good. The rest of those. That one looks great. That one's great. That one's great. Let's just look at it from the other side. You know what? I don't like it right there, and I don't like it right there. So I'm going to just fix that. Oh, I've got a squeaky foot all of a sudden. Oh, that's horrible. What in the world? That's horrible. I think it's, I clean my machine pretty regularly, but, and that's coming from the, spring back here in my walking foot. I can hear it. Whew, that's bad though. Maybe that needs a little machine oil back there. We'll work on that later. Because that sound will make you kind of on edge. All right, everything else, actually, I did want to do this one just a little bit more as well. So see, as careful as we were, I still decided to go over a few things. And you may too, so don't you worry about it if you do. Yeah, that needs oil. Okay. If you ever use oil your own, I know a lot of our more modern machines, we don't oil them anymore. But if you have to use a little oil on something, remember, 1 drop will do you typically. Don't go crazy. You'll end up with a mess. All righty. If you're like me, I've flipped my shoe off underneath there for pedaling. All right, I'm in good shape. I'm going to come over now and bring the camera back up. There we go. So now we have our piece together. That's what it looks like. Kind of a super long birthday cake with birthday candles. Here's where our pokey tool is going to come in handy. So here is our turning gap. And normally I would just turn it in and pull it all out. But on this one, you need to be a little careful and go slowly. Do 1 petal at a time. That way you're not ripping anything out. So here's my finger right there. It's in my petal. So got it in there. And I'm just going to slowly work it, start working it out a little bit, right? With my own fingers. Then I'm going to take the pokey tool and start pushing it through. And I will tell you, please excuse me, I'm going to put on these magnifiers. It helps with this. Just be careful through this because the neck opening of the petal is pretty tiny when you go to turn and get all that fabric going through it. But it'll come out. You just have to work it a little bit. There we go. See, it's starting to come out now. Just give it a little TLC there at the beginning. And as I'm up in here, I'm just making sure that my points are where I want. And I'm just, instead of pushing with my tool, I'm putting my tool up here and I'm working with this hand. I'm working it around the fabric around the tool. That way I'm less likely, I'm less likely to poke through the fabric. If I'm pushing, I'm more likely to poke through. But if I'm working it with my hand onto the tool, I'm less likely. And so now we have 1 through, looks pretty good. Take my tool out for a second. Now I'm going to come in
And I'm going to find that second one. There it is. Let's start pushing it through a little bit. Try to get a little more out there. Okay, there we go. You have to give a little push to get it going, but once it comes through, slow, steady, and easy is the way to go. And now it's through. So I'm just working it with my hand, working the fabric onto the tool to get it out. There we go. There's our second one. Now, where is our third one? Sometimes I lose direction. Must be. Because you've got some of it. There we go. Here's the third one. Put my finger in there and start the turn. Get my pokey tool in there. If you're wondering about these magnifiers that I'm wearing, I worked in medicine for many, many years. And I used to wear these things called loops. Well, I tried using them and they were there to help you see up really close. So now I'm through and I'm just working my petal onto my pointy tool. But I tried using them just to see closer, a little bit more magnified without using a big magnifying glass around my neck and all. And they were too magnifying. So I found these at all places at Michael's craft store. They just clip onto your glasses and I love them. So I'm working that one out, work that out. There we go, not too bad. So that's 3. So now I can just flip the rest of my piece through on that end. So it's come through, but now I have to do the same thing with these 3 over here. So I'm going to flip these and I will be right back and we'll finish up. Okay, folks, I'm back. That second side of mine was a little bit of a bugger to get it to turn, but I finally got it to turn. However, I had a little bit of a breakthrough on one of those petals. I wanted to show you that. I'm going to flip the camera here. We're going to look at this just a little bit. Let me see if I can bring the camera. Whoops. Sorry. Twisted there. I want to bring it down. There we go. So see here where it came through a little bit. This one was really causing me a problem. I'm not worried about this piece and all that. Well, I'm not worried about that. So I just tucked it, stitched it, and now I'm gonna trim away those little bits of fray, and I'm gonna use some Fray Check there. Does everybody know what Fray Check is? It's this little bottle. I'm grabbing mine out of the drawer. It's this little bottle of clear liquid. It's like a glue or something, but it's got that tiny little tip on it. And I'm just literally gonna do a dot and spread it out with my finger. It's going to dry and keep that from fraying anymore. For a little project like this that is meant to be just like a sachet bag or something like that, or a sweets bag, I'm not going to get crazy about turning that back in and redoing it when I had all that problem. But you can see all of our little petals came out great. But we do need to do a good press. Had a little bit of an accident with my iron while I was turning things inside out too. Turn the room a little bit blue. Did I get any on here? It almost started to melt through my floor pad that I have underneath me. Alrighty, so as you can see, we've got our opening here. We need to do something with that. All we're going to do with it though, folks, is tuck it in. You can like put your fingers right here and go like this. Your fabric will automatically fold in, and then we're going to press that. but we're not going to sew it closed. There's no need because when we sew the bag closed, it'll put that in there too. And there's no need to have more bulk in your seams than necessary. So now that I have that pressed good, I'm going to look at any of my flowers one more time, my petals, just to see if I want to, before I close that up, do I want to stick my pokey tool in there and work on them anymore? I'm fine with these. So I am going to take and press now, pull them out and give them a good press. I'm not using any kind of spray or water. You certainly may if you like. I just, this fabric is pressing so beautifully that I don't find it necessary. But if you want to, if you use, you know, a spray, a starch alternative or something, you go right ahead. Perfectly okay. All right, so I'm going to come in here. I want to make sure that this, see, this side was not out all the way. Let's get that out there. That's going to make a difference when we close it off. Have that right there. All right. And I noticed that kind of folded itself in a little farther than I want. So I'm going to bring it out a little bit. It's my piece and I can do that if I need to do that. So I'm just kind of rolling it with my fingers to make it slightly less of a seam there. And I'm going to put my little iron in there. I have a perfect little pinpoint iron for this kind of thing. I should get it out and show it sometime because it can make that a lot easier. But I'm good with it. I'm going to press now. And now I'm going to press out these little petals. They all turned out really nicely. I like them a lot. Okay, got all the pressing done that I need. So I'm going to actually turn this off so it can cool down. Because it sits over here by my sewing machine. And when I accidentally step on the cord, like I did when I was turning my petals inside out, I get a mess. You know what? I think hang on. I re-pressed the same side. No wonder they look so good. Let me give this side a press real quick. The iron's still hot enough that I don't need to turn it back on. There, that's all we needed to do. Great. Okay, everything's laying nice and flat now. Okie dokie. So I haven't been sewing a lot this past week because I have 2 rips in my rotator cuff on my left arm. And I was told not to for a little bit. And I feel like today, like I haven't sewn in a year. All right, so now all I'm going to do, this is my outside fabric. This is my lining. I'm going to fold it up and match up my corners up here. And if you want to, just to keep it, the space, keep it matched up where you want, take a clip. You can use a regular size Wonder Clip if you have them, or a pin right in between the petals. And that'll keep everything held together for you, just like that. You're going to come down here. This is now the bottom. We're going to sew 1/4 inch down on each side. Reinforce with a back stitch here and here. Do not stitch across this bottom, okay? Because we're going to make a little bit of a boxed corner, super simple boxed corner, small boxed corner actually. All right, so I'm all ready. I'm going to go back over to the sewing machine. And we're going to do that 1/4 inch down each long side. Get everything all lined up, needle down. I'm going to come forward. And this way we are going to, I am now going to reset my stitch length to a normal 2.5. I'm going to go back a little bit. Normal 1/4 inch seam allowance. And that's why we don't have to do that edging, because we are catching that edging right in these seams. Okay. One side done. Looks like it shifted a tiny bit. That's all right. Oh, that was just okay. We're good. So we're going to start right there.
And that comes right off the edge there when you get up at the top, and that's fine. All righty. Okay.
Come back over to our main camera. Actually, I want to go back over to this. We'll do this and then we've got to go back to the sewing machine one more time for the box. So I'm going to take my clips out. Now, I don't need to turn this inside out yet because we're going to make our box corners. If you don't want to box your corners, flip this inside out, add a ribbon, and you're done. But it gives it a little stability, especially if you want to set it down to have this tiny boxed corner on it, okay? So all I do is stick my hand in here, and I'm going to come down and just kind of turn that into a triangle, just like that. You can put your seam to the side if you want. You can open it up a little bit if you want. Doesn't truly matter. So I'm going to get it right like that. Now we're going to go back to the sewing machine.
Okay. This seam may tell you how it wants to lie. Mine wants to lie to that side, and I'm going to let it do so. It's not a big deal. When I'm doing bigger box corners on bigger projects, I tend to measure and be really super precise. But on this tiny one, it's not super necessary. So I know right here is my 5/8 inch mark on the bed of the plate of my sewing machine. That's all I want. I'm going to go all the way across and all the way back and off. That's all I'm going to do. That's as big as I want that box corner to be. Now I'm going to flip to the other side and do the same thing. To make sure I'm matching up, I'm taking and I'm folding this down. So like I have two ears here. So like I have a box there. So you see we have a box. I'm going to flip it up, and that way I know that my point and everything is all lined up. Okay, so I'm good there. I get that underside out of the way. I'm going to come back to the machine, and I'm going to come to the 5/8 inch mark, over and back. A lot of times with box corners, we then cut these tabs off and either serge or overlock our edges. We're not going to do that. We're going to go back to the main camera now. We're not going to do that with this project because having these little tabs in here actually helps keep that bottom a little more squared off nicely. So here we are, we're done. Now we're going to flip it inside out, which is pretty easy. I'm going to take my ball pointed poking tool and just make sure that my bottom is boxed and pulled out nicely. If you ever get, like when you're doing these, if the fabric ever stays kind of stuck into the seam and you want to pull it out a little bit, your tweezers, if you get in there on one side and gently manipulate it out with your tweezers, you can usually get your points and stuff to come out a little bit better if you're really worried about them. You don't need to do that on these box corners, but it might help you when you're turning your petals inside out. Alrighty, that's what we've got. I'm gonna just run my finger, or you can run your pokey tool, or those flat edge turners. They look like a piece of bone. That you use just to make sure that your sides are out nicely. There you go. You're done pretty much. So with this one, I stuffed it just for demonstration purposes with a snowball size. That's a pretty good size snowball, isn't it? Of just polyfill. So that's what I'll put in here. Okay, so I've got my polyfill down in here. You can fill it with potpourri or goodies, whatever you want to do. And I'm going to take, let's flip our camera here so you can see me doing this. So I'm going to take a piece, I've chosen a green ribbon for this one.
And I'm going to bring it down to the top of the polyfill, but you can decide where you want to push this. And I'm going to just really bring it in here and tie it. You can even put a little knot there if you don't want it to come back open. But then I just tie a little bow there. Sorry, I tend to pull it close to me and you couldn't see it. I'm sorry. Alrighty. I'm the world's worst bow maker. Make no bones about that. So if it comes out looking half good, I'm happy. There are easier ways to make bows look good. I know how they are, but I'm not going to worry about that for this one. There we go. Now we have a nice little bow there. Now all I'm going to do is kind of adjust out my little petals. And there we go. Let's work this just a little bit more. Sometimes if you pull it over like this and work the fabric right at this spot, you get these to turn out better in the end. See, that looks better. Let's go back to my regular front view camera. One more. There we go. So when you turn this inside this way and you work the fabric here at the opening, you can get these to look a lot nicer. But isn't that sweet? Wouldn't you like to get a little gift in something like this, or fill this with potpourri and give it to a friend with a card? Maybe she's having a bad day, or a bad week, bad month, or bad year. Just give her a little something and say, hey, I'm thinking about you. So that is the little multi-use petal bag. I hope you make lots of them and enjoy them and give them away and spread the joy of the petal around. Thanks so much for joining me for this month, April. Let's get social. I hope to see you again next month. The date for the May one will post in my monthly newsletter. If you subscribe on my website, if you just put in down at the bottom, it says subscribe, you put in your email address, you will get the monthly newsletter sent to you directly. Or I post it as well over on my Facebook page, Heartfelt Creative with Diana, and that'll tell you what we're doing, like what days we do patches and pieces, if I have any classes or workshops that month, and when we will do our next Sunday social. Okay. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day. Take care. Be safe and enjoy a little springtime fun when you're sewing. Bye now.